everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Let's Talk. Today we are going to be taking a look at some Blender pens and Blender pencils. We're not doing any Blender solution because honestly I never really use that. I feel like these are more compact and a little bit, less messy to use. The wonderful Evelyn sent us a number of different blenders to try. I had some already, but she sent the rest of what we needed to give this a true kind of check over and review. So we have the Derwent Burnisher and Blender. In the pack it comes with a burnisher and blender, and they're meant to be used in conjunction, but I wanted to go ahead and try it by itself, each one of them, and then we'll do them together. And then we've got the Derwent Blender Pen, and then we have the Finesse Blender Pen, the Pasteler Blender Pencil, we have Thornton's Blender Pencil, we have the Prismacolor Blender Marker, we have the Lyra Rembrandt Splendor, we have the Tombow water-based blender pen, and then we have the Prismacolor Blender Pencil and the Caran d'Ache Full Blender. Now, in full disclosure, this pencil is kind of the reason why we are doing this, because as most of you know, they are eliminating the full blender. Currently, the packs that are available for purchase, I mean, these are still available, but the prices have jumped way up. The ones that are going to be available for purchase are a mix pack of the blender pencil and the full blender. But I emailed with Caran d'Ache back and forth, and eventually they will phase out this full blender completely. So I figured, why not? Now, granted, I think the pencil will still be the same formula, but we all love this one so much. It seemed like a good opportunity to try out some different blenders and maybe find an alternative for eventually when we can't get these anymore. So we're gonna try out a bunch, see how they work. We're gonna try them on 4 different levels of pencil here. I chose 2 that I know a lot of people have. So we have the Prismacolor and the Polychromo. And then we have the Castle Art, which is a nice budget color pencil. And then I just realized I spelled that wrong. I put Pabos. That's supposed to be Pablos because I can spell. All right, so we're trying out the Pabos. No, we're trying out the Pablos. So these are the pencils that I have here. We have the Pablos. We have the Castle Arts here. I tried to choose fairly similar colors. We've got the Polychromos and the Prismacolor. So I tried to color them all, like kind of do the same blends all the way throughout with the same amount of pressure. So we'll go ahead and try the Derwent Burnisher on all 4 of these and just go all the way through. All right, so let's go ahead, get some of these out of their packages and get started. Okay, so first one first, we have the Derwent Burnisher. Now I was rereading because I actually haven't used the separate, like one's a burnisher and one's a blender before, and actually apparently you are supposed to put the burnisher down before, and I guess the idea is that would flatten the tooth. I don't know how I feel about that though, because a lot of times having the tooth on the paper helps with layering. So we're gonna keep with what I normally do because I don't foresee myself ever laying down a layer of burnishing the paper before I add color on top. I mean, you can, but I don't ever see myself doing that. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and use the burnisher on top of the pencil, and then so we use burnisher, blender, and then we'll do burnisher and then blender on top of this one, all right? So this first one is Prismacolor. So the idea with a burnisher, like I said, a little crumbly, and I've never used a lot of these before. I'll let you know if I have used something beforehand. This one does flatten it out a little bit. So you can see it's definitely taking out that white that that's kind of the reason that we use the blenders. You can still see, now I only did like 1 layer of blue and 1 layer of green when I was filling these in. So a lot of times when I'm doing a coloring page, I will do multiple layers. Like I don't ever expect the blenders to do my blending for me, if that makes sense. So I'll do more layers in the hopes of assisting with the blend. All right, so that was the Prismacolor. Let's go ahead and try the Polychromos. So the Polychromos are an oil-based pencil. The Prismacolors are a wax-based pencil. I believe the Castle Arts are a wax-based pencil. And the Pablos, technically, I guess they're supposed to be like wax and oil. The website says that they're not actually oil. I always thought they were. The jury is still out on that. I was talking with Corey, Colorfully Optimistic, and she's just going to straight up email them and find out what the story is. So, as expected, the Burnisher doesn't really blend the colors. All it does is it flattens the tooth of the paper and kind of helps to eliminate some of that white. Although I'd say that it's more effective in doing that with the Prismacolors than the Castle Arts. It doesn't seem to be doing much for the Castle Arts. But again, it's not a blender, it's a burnisher. And everything I know about burnishing means it's just supposed to help flatten out the tooth of that paper. In fact, this paper had a little bit of an indent here, and that helped to eliminate that just a little bit. So, I don't know, maybe at some point I should give it a legitimate try to use it before I add color on top, but at this point I'm kind of about the burnisher. But again, it's not a blender, it's a burnisher. All right, so this is the Derwent Blender pencil, and we're gonna go underneath and let's see what the difference is. As far as feel is concerned, oh yeah, I can already see this is different. This one feels like it's got a little bit more of like a grittier texture, almost chalkier. You can see we're getting a lot more pencil dust, and it's definitely doing the job of blending for sure. And by that sense, it kind of like ups the vibrancy of the color. So imagine if this is like what a pencil would be like, just sans the pigment. That's, I think, the idea behind the blender. So you can already see the difference between brightness of color between this one and this one. But again, the previous one was a burnisher, not a blender. And doing them now, I don't think there's gonna be, if anything, this one may be less blended, combining the two. And I'm just gonna consistently go left to right, so I don't have any difference in, you know, comparison on how they work. Like, it's just straight out of the bat, like the Pablos already by themselves blend together a little bit better than the other three. You're able to get a bit of a smoother blend. And I think a lot of that has to do with, they've got a good balance between how much pigment comes out, you know, making sure that it's still a fair amount and yet not too much that you can't get soft blends. All right, so in this case, we're gonna do burnisher, then blender, but like I said, I don't think that's gonna do much for it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least try it. So let's do the burnisher first. Pretty much the same as that one up top. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Okay, so with the burnisher, we're just sort of flattening out the tooth. Which honestly, this is the Nina cardstock, so it doesn't have much tooth to begin with. All right, now let's go ahead and use the blender on top. Okay, so we're still getting some of that vibrancy. But I don't know, I guess this one did blend a little bit better than that one. I'm just not quite sure that there's a significant benefit to using two different pencils, when honestly, if you press hard enough with a blender, it's gonna burnish the paper for you as it is. So there's the three. So we have burnisher by itself, blender by itself, and then burnisher blender. I'm not seeing a significant difference, and one that I think would make it worth it for me to make the effort to use two different pencils. All right, now let's move on to the Durant Blender Pen. Now there's two different sizes that come in the pack. I've been curious about these for a while. I've heard of them before. Johanna used them recently in a, well, not recently, in the last year or so, in a video where she did about different blenders. So this one's the smaller one, this one's the larger one. We're gonna use the larger one just because we have a bigger space, but I'll go ahead and take the caps off so you can see size-wise. Oh, that's interesting. Look, the nib is not, I expected it to be like a white. Well, this one is a white. Hang on, let me look at the... No, it's just the size. Maybe they have the nibs different, so, you know, color-wise, it's obvious. Hang on, I'm gonna... No, that's still clear. Okay, so yeah, it's just the color of the nib. Yeah, none of them leaves any kind of color, but we're gonna use, like I said, the wider nib one because we have a bigger space to fill, okay? So this is the Derwent Blender Pen. And with the pens, anytime you use one, I would recommend having a small piece of paper nearby to rub it on in case there's any color transfer. So I've got some little sticky notes up here. So let's see how this works. We've got the Prismacolor one here first. Okay, already that's working really well. Now before we move into the green, I'm just gonna quickly wipe some of that off. Okay, that's actually really good. There we go. Let's try a slightly different direction here. Okay, that's actually pretty decent. And especially if you were to put it in a situation where you were doing multiple layers already to, you know, kind of help with the blend, this really smooths it out and fills in those extra kind of the tooth of the paper without having to really just smush it a ton. But that's also the joy of markers. That's why it's kind of nice sometimes to do like a marker-based background and then layer pencil over the top. All right, so next we'll do the Polychromos. Same kind of effect. Now, Prismacolors are much more, like they've got a lot of pigment to them. They're very soft. So I would say that this didn't smooth out the Polychromos nearly as well as it did the Prismacolors. And I think that has a lot to do with oil versus wax, how much pigment it's released, how much, not loose pigment there is on the paper, but Prismacolors themselves are just kind of known as being a bit smooshier is the word we like to use. All right, let's try Castle Arts. Okay, so already this is working better than the other ones up top. And like I said, I believe it'd be quite a bit smoother if I had put more layers on the paper. But, you know, one layer, I wanted it all to be consistent for us to have kind of a good idea of what it is. Here in a second, too, we'll flip it over and see if it is bleeding through on the back at all. So then now we're gonna do the Pablos. About what I expected, kind of the same as the other ones. And there doesn't seem to be, like, I'm cleaning the tip a little bit and there is a little bit of like pigment on the tip, but honestly, I'm not seeing it trailing back into one another very much. So Derwent Blender Pen, I would be really curious to try this on an actual page. So far, this is the winner, but we're only 4 in, which technically 2 in, or even 1 if you count Burnisher Blender as 1. Okay, so that was the Derwent pens. Next, we're gonna do the Finesse Blender Pen. Now, I had heard of this, but I've never really known anyone that has used it yet, so this is brand new to me. This one, it looks like, is dual-ended. We have a brush tip on one end and a fine tip on another. I think we'll use the brush tip just because it covers more surface area. Okay, so this one is the Finesse on Prismacolor. Quite a bit of ink in there, so it's nice and nice and juicy. That actually works really well. Do I think it works better than the Derwent? Just comparing these two, I would say Finesse over the Derwent. Okay, let's try it on the Polychromos. Really moves around a lot of that pigment. I would love to know what the ingredients are in these to kind of see how it works. I'm not gonna lie, I think this one works better than the Derwent. It looks like it's a little bit smoother, doesn't it? Less harsh lines. All right, let's try Castle Arts. Okay, it's doing okay. Okay, there we go. There we go. There's the Castle Art, or the blend. Yeah, so far I feel like this does a little bit better job, but I forgot to flip it after the Derwent Blender Pen. We'll flip it after this one. Now the Pablos. Okay. I feel like it does change the color a little bit. Let's turn it over. Doesn't look like it's soaking through it all, so that's good. Doesn't feel incredibly wet. I'm actually kind of impressed with that Finesse blender. That's not too bad. That's pretty good. All right, so now we're back to pencils. This is a Pasteler Colorless Blender Pencil. I haven't heard of that one before, so let's go ahead and give it a shot. This is on the Prismacolor. Tiny little bit of breakage. These are all freshly sharpened. A little bit of friction. Doesn't feel as chalky as the other ones though. And I don't feel like I have to press as hard to get a reaction out of it. I don't know about this one. I kind of feel, as far as looks, it seems like it's working similar to the Derwent Blender pencil. Okay, now let's do the Polychromos. It's definitely doing the job in the sense that it's helping with the tooth, but I don't know. I'm not super impressed. So far, I would probably choose the if I was choosing pencils based on what I've used so far, I would choose the Derwent over the Pasteler. And all the links for these will be in the description below as well. Okay. Let's go ahead and try Thornton's blender pencil. It's just a colorless blender. Darkening up the color about the same as the others. I get the sense that this is kind of similar to the Pasteler. So far, like, they're definitely all harder ones. They definitely have that scratchy feel to it, which is one of the reasons that I love the Caran d'Ache, because it is so much smoother. I mean, because I don't know about you all, but I cannot handle it when a pencil is like so scratchy it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. I wouldn't say that it's quite like that, but it definitely has more of that air to it than the Prismacolor does. Yeah. Thornton's is, should we be grading these? Like, 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10. All right, that was the Thornton's blender pencil. Then we have the Prismacolor Blender marker, which I have used on the markers, Marco Raffines, and I did like. This one also is dual-ended, so we have the chisel, which is the end we'll probably use just because we have a bigger space, and fine tip, which is what I've used so far, and I liked it. I wasn't comparing it to any others, but I liked it. All right, so this is the Prismacolor blender marker here. Apologize if you can hear the dog barking. Oh, now that's interesting. I almost feel like the Finesse blends a little bit better than it. Let's see, will the fine tip make any difference? I apologize again for the dog barking. The neighbors are outside. Maybe the fine tip would make a little bit of a difference. Maybe it's because it's not putting out nearly as much ink as the Finesse does. But yeah, I'm actually thinking that the Finesse does a little bit better. But it also, like I said, puts out a lot of blending solution. It's the Castle Art and the Pablo. Because see, here's the interesting thing, is that this is a Prismacolor pencil, and this is the Prismacolor Blender marker. You'd think that they would need to be, fairly compatible. But I mean, if you look at the two, the Finesse, even the Derwent, does a little bit better job than the Prismacolor one. And like I said, I tried to use equal pressure on all of these. All right, let's do the Splendor. Leo Rembrandt Splendor. I've heard a lot of good things about this. Okay, already out of the gate, it feels softer and nowhere near as scratchy as the other pencils we've used so far. So that's something for sure. Yeah, definitely less scratchy. Not as smooth, honestly. So far, the Finesse Blender and Derwent Blender seem to be blending the best as far as like doing the blending work for you. Again, if I maybe like had spent more time and more layers and everything, but this is the first time I've ever really compared them all like side by side. But so far, honestly, the Finesse marker is winning out for me. Okay, and then the Pablos. Okay, not bad. So far out of the pencils, I like the Splendor the best. I probably should have done like all the markers in a section and all the pencils in a section to keep it a little bit more equal. All right, let's try the Tombow water-based blender pen. This one also is dual-ended, so we have a brush tip on one end, which is the end we'll be using, and then we have a fine tip on the other end. So let's go ahead and do the Tombow water-based blender, which it's important to note that it is water-based versus the alcohol blenders. Okay, it's not bad. I feel like it's a little bit, maybe a little bit better than the Prismacolor one. Okay, Polychromos. Okay, then we're gonna do the castle art. I can see the pigment getting moved around with this one. Yeah, that one got moved around pretty significantly, and that could have more to do with the pencil than it does the blender. And then the Pablos. So obviously with the markers, you're dealing with a liquid versus something that's dry. So of course the pencils and markers are gonna be significantly different. Okay, and then let's go ahead and do the Prismacolor Blender Pencil, which I'm gonna try and go into this non-bias because most of you know I'm not a huge fan of this one, but I'm gonna take this one into consideration in comparison to the other pencils that we're using. All right, so this is the Prismacolor Blender. Okay, this one is, it is so scratchy. It's so scratchy. It works, it seems to work well with the Prismacolors, but Prismacolors are also like highly pigmented. So that can have a lot to do with it. All right, and then we've got the Polychromos. Okay, then the castle art. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It definitely helps to burnish, you know, burnish the paper, but I don't know, at this point, you know, minus the Caran d'Ache blender, which we already know is like one of my favorites, the Finesse Blender Pen is actually still like leading the pack here. All right, let's go ahead and do the Caran d'Ache full blender, which I just love so much. Look at how smooth that is. And it's so soft. But it's also, because I didn't do multiple layers, it's also kind of a good test because as you can see, along with the other ones, I guess we can't really count it as blending because you can see it's not trailing it across quite like the other ones. So there's different ways to gauge these. You know, capability of actually blending for you. I never expect blender pencils to blend for me, but what I really like about the Caran d'Ache blender is that it really just makes the colors pop so much more. Like it ups the vibrancy of them. So a lot of times when I'm working on a page, it's just really nice to see that color kind of darken and, you know, get deeper. All right, so that's all of them. Let's go ahead and zoom on out and kind of chat a little bit about all of their capabilities. All right, so in terms of, and actually let's mark these real quick. In terms of pencils versus markers, okay, so these here were the pens and markers, let's see. So I feel like these need to be kept in their own category because of course they're going to work differently than the pencils, okay? So in terms of pens and markers, out of all 4 of the pens, as far as blending capability to do the blending for you, I think the Finesse Blender wins out. As far as eliminating pigment or making them more vibrant and brighter, in comparison to the 4, I feel like the Prismacolor keeps it very nice and vibrant. So if you're not expecting it to do the blending for you, then I would say the Prismacolor blender because you don't lose any of the saturation of your color. However, the Finesse blender seems to blend out those colors really well. Easily, hands down, this one blended the colors for you better than anything on the chart, in my opinion. Now, as far as pencils are concerned, okay, so first let's look. I already know for me, the full blender wins for vibrancy. Derwent is probably a close second on that one. As far as doing the blending for you, we could take a look here at the Blender Burnisher. Actually did a pretty decent job of kind of fading that out. Prismacolor Blender would maybe come up there a close second. But then if you detract points for scratchiness and like how it sounds, because I know some people are really sensitive to that, then that would knock Prismacolor lower down on the list. I hate to say it, but I think I'm still going to have to keep the Caran d'Ache blender as my top one. I was hoping I could offer you an alternative for pencil. Now, everybody's different, so feel free to try these out for yourself. This is my own personal opinion. So as far as the pencils are concerned, I still go with this one. Because as I said, I never expect the blender pencils to do the blending for me. I always consider it something that kind of eliminates the white of what you're working on, maybe softens the edge a little bit, but I don't ever expect it to blend the pencils for me. I need to do that with blending the pencils itself. As far as the markers are concerned, I actually feel like the Finesse wins out, which is something I'll have to look up the price, and I'll put all the links, like I said, below. But I think the Finesse is actually a little bit more budget friendly than the other ones as well. So there we have it. In terms of markers, I say the Finesse wins. In terms of pencils, I still got to go with the full blender. At some point, maybe I'll have to get my hands on one of the Caran d'Ache blender pencils and kind of see. I would think it'd be the same formula, but I don't want to say for sure until I've tried them out. But yeah. I think that's my opinion on everything. If you've used any of these or if you have a favorite or why, please put it in the comments. I'd love to hear what everybody thinks if you've got any of these. If there are other pencils or markers, I'm not talking blending solutions, but if there are other pencils or markers that maybe I missed that you really enjoy using, go ahead, let me know in the comments. In the meantime, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw here today, every Saturday we have a new Let's Talk episode. We got some fun stuff coming up, but be sure to hit that subscribe button. Hit that thumbs up, turn your notifications bell on so you can know, when we go live and when we post more videos. And yeah, that's everything for now. I will see you next time. Bye.